Hi guys, it's Trevor Tolliver here, and you're listening to the Blue Day podcast.
Fellow Chelsea supporters, here at the Blue Day podcast, I am delighted to welcome this individual on the show today. He made 171 appearances for the club, scoring 5 goals. He won the Second Division Championship in 1989 and the Full Members Cup with the club in 1990. Plus, he played with the likes of Dave Besant, Kerry Dixon, and Dennis Wise. Here is Gareth Hall. Gareth, welcome to the Blue Day podcast. How are you doing?
Very well, Keith. Thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation. It'd be good to chat.
No, Gareth, the pleasure's all mine. I'd like to start the interview, if I can, by sort of going back to sort of your early days and talking about who or what influenced you to become a professional footballer.
Yeah, cool. That's going back, Keith, to be fair. That's going to rack my brains. I think, in the early 80s, when I was kind of in my teen years, really, I think I looked at the top Liverpool team at the time. So my influences would have been people like Dalglish and Souness and people like that. And then once I got into football and started, and obviously the local area, then you get into players that are playing locally as well. So it's they would have been my starting point, really. And then it's not really, because football takes over your life a little bit when you get into like 16, 15 and you're into school. And then when I started join Chelsea, I think probably 86 I joined as a professional at 17, or probably earlier than that as a schoolboy. So probably about 16. And then you get into the first team players like John Bumstead and Colin Pates and people like that, and Kerry and David Speedy. And then they sort of become your idols, really, and you kind of guys that you looked up to kind of move your career on, and what did they do in training and how did they kind of behave and stuff like that. So it was that was kind of my progress really into football. But obviously my dad was a key to it as well, and the kind of pusher, and he drove us everywhere and stuff. So yeah, 2 or 3 kind of individual people football wise, like I say, Dalglish and Souness and the successful teams at the time, really. So yeah, that's kind of how it started for me, really.
When you was going through the ranks at Chelsea, what was sort of your favourite position? Was it always going to be at right back or right midfield? What position did you feel that you could be good at?
Yeah, I was just comfortable playing anyway. I just wanted to play football at that stage. I think most boys would say that at 16, 17, we just wanted to play in the games. And I suppose when you start off at Chelsea, I mean, I came on to something. John Hollins was, when I first joined, obviously, John Neal was manager. I didn't have a lot to do with John because I was so young, but my first proper manager really was John Hollins. So John gave me my debut. I came on at Plough Lane against Wimbledon. Thanks, cheers, John, for that one. And obviously when Vinny and Fash and people like that were all on the pitch, so I came on as a 17-year-old, and it's like, it opens your eyes. So and that was the starting point for me. And then obviously moved on to having aspirations of being successful in the reserves. And then, you're moving on, and your target is to get in the first team and stay in there. So that's how it all really started for me at Chelsea. Yeah. So we go back on your question again. So I didn't really answer your question there, did I, properly?
No, that's fine. I want to talk about your debut in a minute, but what was it like, sort of going back to the time when you was, part of the Chelsea Academy, which is a lot different to what it is now, and going through the reserves? What was it like for you back then? Sort of, was there anybody in particular that was able to provide you the support you needed to then go through the different stages at Chelsea? What sort of other teammates was there for you in terms of, having good friendships with on and off the pitch?
Yeah, I mean, we started off, I played at sort of 15, 16, and Gwyn Williams spotted me playing for Meadow Sports out in Woking. And that's how he invited me to Chelsea. I'd previously been to Tottenham. I trained at Tottenham. We got the tube up there with David Howes and played for them on a Sunday. I went to Aston Villa, and they wanted me to sign Tottenham. I went to Aston Villa for a 3-week training camp in the summer. They wanted me to sign as an apprentice. And then the last one, my dad said, right, Chelsea, what do you want to do? They're training on Tuesday night. Do you want to go and get involved? I said, yeah, absolutely. So, so again, we get up there, and obviously the Tottenham, the Villa stuff, it was all a bit big, and get well looked after, and it's fantastic. Got to Chelsea, it was like getting the minibus. We're across the Battersea Park. We're training on the Red Ash. There's a bit of kit. Crack on. It was one of those, it's like just get on with it. And you're training against lads that were probably Mickey Bodley and people like that. They were like 2 or 3 years older. So you're thrown into the mix. But what I remember is sitting in that minibus on the way back after training and thinking it was such a laugh. Keith, do you know what I mean? It was like, it was football, but they were all getting on with each other, and it was a laugh, and they were taking the mickey and all that kind of stuff. And I really loved that atmosphere. And I went home and told my dad, and he was like really surprised. He's going, what, you're not going to go to Villa, or you don't? He goes, listen, I'll leave it up to you, whatever. Anyway, I had 2 or 3 more training sessions through Battersea Park and through Gwyn. And to be fair to Gwyn, he was really good with us. As young kids, he was always looked out for us, talked to the parents, and make sure everything was spot on. And he didn't make any promises. He said, if you do well and you set your stall out and train hard, then you'll get rewarded. And after 2 or 3 more weeks going to Chelsea and training on that Red Ash at Battersea Park, which was crackers, I just said to the old man, I said, I want to sign. And Gwyn was made up, and then we signed and got on with it from there, really. It was, there was no, going back then, I mean, Billy Dodds was my age as well. And the guys behind me, like David Lee and Graham Stewart, they came obviously a little bit later. But anyone that was there, it was Ian Braithwaite was there, and Stokely Sawyers, people like that. I'm going back now, so you might not know them, but probably before you were born, Keith, maybe. I don't know.
Just a little bit, yes.
Yeah.
Just a little bit.
But these were good lads, and they were like London lads, and there was no airs and graces. It was like, if you can play, you can play. And obviously after a few sessions, they realised I was quite good. So you kind of get your teammates on your side that way, don't you? So, so I signed for them, and the rest is history, really. Yeah. Do I regret it? Not one bit. You could have gone to Tottenham, you could have gone to Villa. Things might have panned out a little bit differently, but I wouldn't have changed anything for the world, to be fair, because obviously my time at Chelsea, especially in the early years when we had a really nice group of lads, and to be fair, everyone was nice, but it was like they're all good players. And Gwyn was finding people, and we had some really good players come through, and obviously it was older ones to us who Gwyn had worked on as well, like Keith Jones, Keith Dublin, Phil Priest, people like that. They were really good players in my eyes, and so it was good. It was a good place to be, a healthy place to be, and the production line, of youth team players was really healthy. So that's my early story at Chelsea, and then you play in the reserves and get into the first team, and then it's just fantastic, just fantastic. But over and above anything else, and it wasn't really, there was no kind. It's different now. Like obviously 16, 17-year-olds, they're getting absolute fortunes. Money was never like, I don't think it never came into my head. It was all about playing football. I'm playing for Chelsea. That's it. Bang. The money was separate, really. Yeah, of course, in the end, you kind of get looked after, but you got to go out and earn it a little bit, So it was good. It was good. Like I say, I wouldn't change it for the world. Yeah, I'd like the money, but you can't have it all, can you, Keith?
No, you certainly can't. And you said earlier that you made your debut against Wimbledon. It was quite late in the season as well, in 86, 87. When did you know that you was going to be in the squad? And did you get any sort of prep talk from John Hollins at all during that sort of weekend?
No, not really. No, I think I don't know whether I've been subbing the previous game. I'm not sure, but I thought I might be sub. And then you kind of go with the squad, and there's obviously a couple of people that get left out of the subs. And I don't know how many subs going back then. It's probably only about 3 subs at that time. So I was named sub, and nothing was said really. It was literally like, get on with it. Obviously it's tactics and stuff like that you listen to, and who you're marking at a corner and stuff like that. But it was very natural. It was like you've just felt that John had trust in me, that the fact that he was putting me on the pitch meant that to me that he had trust in me to do well, and that was more than enough, And I don't think sometimes things don't need to be said, So, John Hollins, a Chelsea legend, FA Cup winner, Cup winner. He's putting you on the pitch, and I'm 17 years of age. So if he's seen something in me, happy days, isn't it? you know.
Of course, and it wasn't until November of that year that you started your first game for Chelsea, and it was against Derby County.
Yeah.
Was it sort of looking back then? Was it a case of you biding your time, waiting for the opportunity to arise to the point where, when the opportunity came, you would grasp it with both hands?
Yeah, you see, like you just want to play well, Keith. You know, you just want to get in there and do well for yourself because all the training you've done, and you just think that at some point you're going to have to play in these games, and it's sink or swim. That's how it was then. Fortunately for me, when I played at Derby, Clive Wilson was playing in front of me, and I think it was live on the telly. I think on a Sunday afternoon, and I only knew the night before that I was playing. So obviously I played, and I think we lost the game 2-0 in the end. But
that's right.
I felt I had a good game. I think I've still got the video of that VHS on it. So, but I thought I'd done all right in the game. My best mate at the time, Vaughan Ryan, who was playing for Wimbledon, he watched the game and he phoned me up like on the way home and just said, "Oh, Gareth, I thought you'd done really well in the game." So that was enough for me to go, "Oh, you know what I mean?" It was enough. But Clive Wilson was brilliant that day because he was a left footer playing on my side, and he was like, he just filled every space, blocked it, didn't sort of covered me, make sure that I wasn't put under too much pressure. But that's Clive, to be fair, top lad, top player, And as a young lad, he looked after me, and he probably would have been in the same situation when he made his debut for Man City and stuff. So, these you always look up to your senior pros, and he done very well for me that day, and I enjoyed the game, and just thought, this is where I want to be, as much as possible.
Because in that right back spot as well, you was competing with Steve Clarke. How good of a player was he? Because a lot of people now seem to sort of just remember him as a coach, whether it was at Chelsea or in other clubs. Not many people remember him as a player. How good was he for Chelsea?
Yeah, he was he was kind of different. Like he was probably a bombing fullback, really, slightly different to myself. I mean, I did end up playing a lot of games in midfield as well at some stage for Chelsea. Especially in a few for Bobby Campbell and Dave Webb and Glenn. So I played in midfield. So he was a different type of player, really. Probably a little bit more offensive than myself, I would say. So probably better on the eye, but a good player nevertheless, obviously. And then obviously a good servant for Chelsea as well. So yeah, that was that competition. But as a young lad, you kind of don't get into it. It's you want to be in there all the time, but you got to realise that it's a big club, and team's going to change at times. So you just roll with it, and I ended up being at Chelsea for quite a while. So you're in there and you're involved. So it was nothing personal, obviously.
However, though, the club was quite inconsistent that particular season, and it was the club getting relegated through the divisional playoff. Do you remember much about this particular era at Chelsea? Because we did have John Cody on the show recently, and he was referencing that the team or the squad was fractured. There was quite a few cliques around it in the team. Do you remember sort of much about this particular time with Chelsea?
Yeah. Yeah. Because you're such a young lad, you don't really notice the whole politics of it all, really, I don't think. But it probably was. John's probably right there. And he was obviously coming from another, he'd come from Ireland, and it was obviously a bit more difficult to settle and stuff. But yeah, he's probably right. There probably was a few clicks, whether it's London or Scotland or whatever, it was, but when you're not doing well, there's always finger pointing, isn't there? That's the problem. And did we get relegated through the playoffs that year? Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah, I think I played. I don't know whether I played.
I believe. Hang on, I've got.
Did I play in the first game, the first playoff game?
Here.
I didn't play in the Middlesbrough game. I remember that.
You came on against Middlesbrough in the playoff where we won 1-0, but it wasn't enough.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, obviously it was a learning curve for me as a young lad to see senior players struggle. And the club struggle as a whole from results and stuff. I mean, there were some good players there still at the time. It just didn't have that. We probably just didn't have enough good players, good players to get us through at that stage. And I think we're a little bit unfortunate, to be honest, to be where we were. But, it's part of the history, and you kind of learn from it. But as a young lad, like I say, you just kind of look at it and learn, and hopefully the next season is going to be a little bit different,
Well, the following campaign in the second division under Bobby Campbell. We didn't start brilliantly. There was a few sort of games where we were not getting the results, and I believe we were sort of mid-table, sort of around about the September time. But for you personally, what was your ambitions going into it? Was it a case of, okay, it's a different league than before, but I might be able to get more game time under this belt? And was you happy with your development at that stage?
Yeah, definitely. Being in and around the first team, you're always happy. So it doesn't really probably doesn't matter what kind of league you're in, especially as a young lad. You just want to play as many games as you can and be in and involved, you know. And obviously, we were going to be a strong team in that league. There was no doubt about it. So being in and around the first team squad at the time was the most important thing for me to, and you know, and as part of my development, you know, that was key to it as well. So it was important to be in and around that. And I think that the season got better from there on in, didn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we ended up getting promoted back into the first division under the guidance of Bobby Campbell. What was your thoughts on Bobby as a coach?
Yeah, I love Bobby. Yeah, I thought he was a great man, a great football man, a great character. Someone we looked up to as young lads, and he had faith in young lads as well, which was really important. And he brought in Peter Nicholas and Graham Roberts at the time, didn't he?
That's right, yeah.
I mean, that was, you know, that's the best thing he done because they were senior players, and you know, obviously Nico probably about 80 odd caps or 79 caps or something for Wales, and Graham played for Tottenham. You know, didn't hold that against him at all, but he'd been successful there, and he played at Rangers. So as young lads, it was like, wow, you know, we've got some proper players here. So it was invaluable for us, and obviously for a team point of view with Kerry as well. I mean, you know, that was a strong team in that league. Ended up being a very strong team in that league, which was great because Bobby's a good man and was a good man, and he guided us well. He guided us well in that particular time. He guided the club well, in fact, during that particular time.
Was it a case of the fact that he was able to bring in the experienced players, like, as you say, Peter Nicholas and Graham Roberts, along with the quality that was in that Chelsea? It was just such a good blend whereby it just everything sort of fitted together, and there was results that were coming in. We managed to beat Leeds comfortably at Stamford Bridge, if I remember rightfully. You had the game against Walsall away, where I believe Dixon scored a few and Kevin Wilson scored a few that season as well. So it just sort of seemed to sort of blend quite nicely, didn't it?
Yeah, he got that right. And I think Dorigo came in, and Clive, like I said, Clive Wilson was at the club. Kevin Wilson, another great goal scorer. So we had a really good mix, really good. And obviously Clarkey, myself, David Lee, Damien Matthew as young lads, with Graham Stewart as young lads. There was a really good mix of kind of experience and legs as well. You know, young lads that can get around and kind of be guided into being successful, which we ended up being, didn't we? Yeah.
Now, you did manage to score your first goal for Chelsea. I'm not sure if you remember. It was, I believe it was a 30-yard screamer against Manchester United at Stamford Bridge.
No, it wasn't, was it?
No, it was...
no. I mean, it was a little tap in, wasn't it?
Just a 1 yard tap in, but it was still significant.
Yeah, no, I remember.
How relieved was you to finally get off the mark for Chelsea? It was at Stamford Bridge as well, so to score in front of the home supporters must have been quite a thrill for you.
It was great. No, it was great. I mean, I can remember it, and I've seen it a few times recently. And the best bit about it was when I popped it through Steve Bruce's legs, and then we were through, and Kerry's had a shot and stuff, put Kerry through. And I just followed it in, really, because I didn't think it was going in. But the best bit about it is obviously I nicked the goal off Kerry, so I was quite pleased about that. He wasn't, obviously, but and I remember taking Viv Anderson into the net with me as well. And
that's right.
Yeah. It was just kind of, you knew it weren't going in, so it was like, I've got to get to it. But it was just one of those things where you just follow it up. But happy to be in the opposition box, to be honest, Keith. You know, so it was just a
bit of a rarity.
It was good, yeah, but a great thrill, and the fact that we won the game as well. So a massive thrill, absolutely massive thrill.
And it was a month later. The hits kept on coming for you. You play at Wembley for Chelsea in the Full Members Cup final against Middlesbrough, ironically. What are your memories of that day?
great memories. Obviously, we won the game, but I got a bit of a. It was a different, hard game for me because I can't remember his name. Playing wide left, right-footed. I can't remember his name. Bernie Slavin, something like that. Maybe it was.
Right.
But I had a tough game. I don't know whether I played particularly well, but obviously we won the game, didn't concede, so we must have done something right. But I remember it being a fantastic day, and obviously a big day for me being so young. Remember the free kick, great free kick from Tony, and the place being packed, which was amazing. I mean, it was a small cup really in those terms, but again, that just shows how big. Well, obviously Middlesbrough, big club, but how big Chelsea was at that time. Great support, and yeah, it was a massive thrill. And the trouble is with those days, they're a bit of a blur because you're so focused on the game. It's not just another game, obviously, but the actual game going on, you don't really remember too much about it, but you remember kind of afterwards. And I remember, I think there was a do Ken Bates laid on in Grosvenor Square or something like that for the players and friends and stuff like that. But I remember not going. I remember for whatever reason I couldn't be bothered to go. So me and my girlfriend, my wife now, we just went for a curry over in we were home just outside Woking. And we were sitting in the curry house about 2 hours later after we'd won, just having a curry and a beer. That was me all over really, because like if I didn't fancy doing something afterwards, I was like, nah, come on, let's go. But obviously it was great to win that. And good for the lads as well. It was a good boost for the lads. And there's some good players in there, like people like John Bumpster playing at Wembley and winning again, and like he did against Man City that time. Good players, some good players, and it was a really great day out. Really great day out. Great curry too.
Would you say that was sort of the highlight of the season? Not just to be back in the first division, but to have that Wembley appearance, and albeit the full Members Cup isn't a big trophy, but it's a trophy nonetheless, and it was something that I've sometimes speak to the Chelsea fans now at Stamford Bridge, and they still talk about that particular time.
Yeah, I think it was important, as little as it may seem now. I think it was important at the time, because I suppose the club, if Bobby hadn't signed those particular players and we jumped as expected it back straight away, I don't know where the club would have gone from there. So I think it was an important time. Bobby's made the right decisions, and to be successful and get yourself out of the league. I think it was a record number of points we got as well. Is that right?
I believe so. Yes, at the time.
Yeah. I mean, that's at the time. Yeah. So that was a massive achievement, and obviously winning at Wembley as well, brilliant. So I think it was important that Chelsea bounced back straight away, and then kind of you find a bit of stability, hopefully, when you go up in the following season.
And it was the 1991 season that you pretty much established yourself as a regular for Chelsea. You was on one of the first names on the team sheet. It seemed, based on the stats.
Yeah.
Did you feel that you was able to make that right back spot your own, because Steve Clarke didn't play many games that particular period, and there was a number of games where we was actually getting some decent results as well?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think when you get a run in the side, you get the faith of the manager and the faith of the lads that are playing with, and yeah, that was a particularly good run for me. So yeah, I mean that was a highlight. Having a long run of games was a massive highlight for me in my career, especially at Chelsea. So yeah, but like I say, it's the faith in the manager. So you must be playing, you must be doing all right, Keith. You must be playing well and stuff. So that was the pat on the back I needed to keep going forward. But football being so fickle at that time, and Chelsea being a bit of a fickle club, we didn't know which way things were going. It was an up and down, so you didn't know what was coming the following season. So you had to grab it with both hands and play as many games as you possibly can and enjoy it at that time, which I did. I certainly enjoyed that season for sure.
And there was a change at the end of that season. Bobby Campbell would leave and Ian Porterfield would take over. Was there a bit of shock amongst the Chelsea squad at the time? And what do you remember of that situation?
Yeah, I think there was surprise at the time. Yeah. Partly surprised, and then obviously you throw Batesy into the mix as well. So then there's no surprise, So it's kind of could be brutal at times. So I don't know the reasoning behind Bobby. Obviously, results probably being the key factor. I don't know how things panned out there, but we were surprised and disappointed as well. Disappointed because Bobby was, like I say, he was a good man and a great football man and a great character as well. And I think you need to be that as a manager. And he was one of the best for me and other lads as well. So it was a surprise. It was a surprise, Keith, to be honest.
Now, I was going through my research. I was sort of having a look at the stats, and I was having a look at certain news and notes. Is it true that shortly after the appointment and Ian Porterfield came in with the first couple of weeks, that you asked to leave the club?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, I mean, I was kind of not fickle, but I was. Probably at that stage, you felt that you'd done all right and things were changing. It was another change of manager again. I probably felt, I can't remember too much about that, to be fair, Keith, but I probably did. And it was probably part of my character as well, bit headstrong, maybe, at that time. I'm sure David and Graham would back me up on that, as in being a little bit morose when I was a younger player. But yeah, I probably went in there and asked to leave. Yeah, probably. I know there was a bit of interest from a couple of other clubs at that time, but nothing really came of it. I don't think. Well, it obviously didn't. No.
But it wasn't until '92, so going sort of pretty much 6 months after this particular event, that you would then come back into the fold at Chelsea and start playing regularly. At any point in that time, did you speak to Ian about the lack of first team football? Was there any issues between yourself and him in terms of playing and in terms of what he wanted out of you?
No, not really. I mean, I think the problem is obviously Clarkey had a good run in the side, and once you don't play for when you've played so many games and then you don't play for 2 or 3 months, it's like, well, where am I going from here? So. And I suppose as a young lad, you just want to feel wanted, and I think probably wasn't feeling that at the time. Ian was no problem. I had no problem with Ian. He's another great football man and a great player in his time and a good manager. So, yeah, maybe I had to bite the bullet a little bit and, like I say, got back into the fold a few months later and just carried things on from there, really. But probably a little blip where I got a little bit ahead of myself and, like I say, a bit headstrong and a bit morose. So, yeah. But experience, another life experience, Keith,
Well, speaking of a life experience, it sort of leads me on to my next question. Your only sending off for Chelsea was in a 1-0 win against Everton in the League Cup.
Yeah.
There seemed to be a little bit of controversy sort of surrounding it, and there seemed a little bit of what's the word I could put? A little bit of back and forth between yourself and a couple of the people on the Everton bench in terms of what was said. What exactly did happen? First of all, was it a sending off, if you remember? And secondly, what was the issues between yourself and the opposition's bench?
Yeah, all I remember, obviously, sent off. It was a tackle against Billy Kenny, who was a central midfielder at the time. But it was one of those situations, Keith, in the game where the ball kind of ends up in no man's land, and you're both going for the ball, and you're thinking, right. And the reason I went high and smashed into him because I thought, do you remember a lad called Barry Horn, played for Southampton and Everton? Yeah,
name rings a bell. Yes.
And Barry, he'd kick his grandmother, to be fair. So, and I knew him from Wales. So he loved the tackle. And I'm thinking, as I'm right, I couldn't see who it was, but I'm thinking, it's Barry Horn, right? So I'm thinking, I've got to look after myself here. So I've just gone way over the top and smashed into him. And as it turns out, look behind, it's not even him, it's Billy Kenny lying on the floor. And it was a definite sending off. But as we've walked off, I think we were winning the game at the time, 1-0. And yeah, Howard Kendall come out the box with a couple of other lads and they started tearing at me. I didn't say a word to him. All I did was just point my finger to the scoreboard and just carried on walking. So that was that, really. I can't remember what Howard said, but he obviously gave me a complete mouthful. But touch wood. I mean, we won the game 1-0, but I would have felt awful if we'd lost the game because it wasn't a great decision. But it was more of a self-preservation decision, Keith, to be honest. Because if that had been Barry would have been probably a foot higher than I was, to be honest. And
So
he'd
it's a
admit
case
that.
of mistaken identity then.
It was a little bit, yeah, it was a little bit, yeah. But it's funny because I speak to Graham Stewart regularly and David Lee, and we've been on golf trips together recently for our 50th and stuff. And Graham said, Howard Kendall wanted you up at Everton. So it was one of those where I thought, well, at least Howard did like it in the end. So that was quite nice. That was quite
You made
nice.
an impression on him then, basically.
Certainly made an impression. Yeah.
Sort of moving on swiftly to sort of the end of the 92-93 season, David Webb came in on a temporary basis after Ian Porterfield got sacked. How different was it to work with David Webb? And I believe this was sort of at the point where I believe David put you in as a central midfielder, as more of a creative type central midfielder.
Yeah.
How was that sort of different for you?
Again, it was because you're a young player, and I loved it in midfield. I really enjoyed it in midfield, and Dave, again, just another one gave you the faith to play in it, and he said, like, you get yourself in there. I think Andy Townsend was playing in there at the time, and John Bumstead and people like that. So again, I had good players around me to learn from, but it was quite an easy transition for me, and I really enjoyed it. And Dave was just another one, a great football man, and it wasn't too overcomplicated on things, and he trusted you as a character to go out and do your best, and that was an enjoyable kind of. He wasn't there long, to be fair, was he? So that was another enjoyable spell because it was giving me something different, and I was learning something different playing central midfield, which, like I say, I enjoyed and I learned from as well.
And it was in that summer of 93, Glenn Hoddle came in from Swindon and he brought in big changes to Chelsea. Certain players left, others came in, like Gavin Peacock, for example. Did you and him have any discussions about his plans for you, bearing in mind that you've been at Chelsea now for a few seasons? You've been playing in different positions, whether right back, left back or centre mid. Did he sort of outline his plans for you during that period?
Not individually. I don't think he did that with anyone individually. I don't think that was Glenn's way, really. It was, he came in, brought some great players in, and brought a different system, brought different ideas, a different mindset as well in terms of, things we did away from the looking after yourself a little bit better, and physios and bits and pieces. But really fresh ideas. Obviously, I think he came from Monaco at the time. So, it was all very kind of European based. Obviously it's in place now everywhere, but at the time it kind of changed that thinking, and systems as well. And Glenn was straight into kind of playing a sweeper system, because I think, he played sweeper for Chelsea in those early days, didn't he?
That's right.
So, so kind of wing back. I was never a wing back ever going to play wing back, really, in terms of, I'll play there obviously, but it wasn't, Clarkey was always a wing back in the terms of the way he played and stuff. So it was a little bit different. And then I played in the reserves a lot, and we played the same system, and I played a holding role, and I remember playing a holding role in the first team as well a few times, and I played left back as well, and it just varied, really. And we changed systems quite a lot. It was either a back four with a 4-5-1. That's when it kind of started getting a bit more technical football in terms of strategies and patterns of play and stuff like that. And Glenn's obviously a very good coach, and he wanted to put his stamp on the side and the club, which he did over his time there, which was fantastic.
We did reach the FA Cup final that season in '94, but we got hammered against Manchester United. However, the next season we was in Europe for the first time in a long, long time. It was in the Cup Winners' Cup. What was it like for you, again, coming through the ranks at Chelsea in the late 80s, getting relegated into the second division, to now being part of that European side in the Cup Winners' Cup, where we play against Austria, Memphis, I believe they were called, and then that particular game against Club Brugge where you would come on, we needed to win because of the first leg we lost, and we ended up winning that game at Club Brugge to progress into the next stage.
Yeah, amazing experiences, and it was almost like, you know, it had come kind of full circle, and like football was like, this is you know, Chelsea come, like you say, come up through the ranks, and we've gone down a division, come back at the division, we've stabilised, and now Glenn was moving it on to the next level. So, and it felt like the next level as well in terms of the teams we were playing. Playing in Austria in that game where Spenny scored that great goal, breakaway goal.
Wonderful
I think,
goal, really wonderful.
Yeah, I
goal,
dislocated my shoulder. I think just towards the end of the first half, and carried on until half time. But just remembering that atmosphere and feeling, and the preparation for the game, Glenn was like spot on for the preparation and stuff, and just feeling like, you know, this is proper. You know, this is like we're playing properly, European football, different style of football as well, but felt very comfortable, and it was really enjoyable, to be honest. And a great experience. Obviously not dislocating my shoulder, so I got to half time, like I just couldn't move. It was weird, but that the whole experience of it was fantastic. Yeah, and good for the club, you know, and that's the most important thing, really. And it kind of moved forward from there, didn't it? I think Hullet came the year later as well.
That's right. But that particular game against Club Brugge, do you remember the atmosphere that night at Stamford Bridge? Because again, they haven't been used to European nights for a long time. You know, needing to win, and they got that particular sort of scoreline needed. What was the atmosphere like to play under, especially with European nights at the Bridge?
Yeah, amazing. I've never experienced it before, because obviously the stadium had started to change as well in terms of the dynamics of it. So yeah, it was an amazing atmosphere, and an absolutely fantastic result. Looking back now, I think very important result as well, Keith. You know, I think in terms of Chelsea's history and that, I think it was really important from where they went from that stage onwards. The only way was up, really, and yeah, like I say, it was a fantastic night and great atmosphere and a fantastic result.
Now, your last goal for Chelsea, and funny enough, I saw the highlights of this last night when I was doing my research, came in a thrilling game against Bolton. Now, this one was a cracking goal. Left-hand side, but it was your right foot against Bolton. Would you say, looking back, based on your career, that was probably your best goal?
Yeah, I think, yeah. To be fair, Keith, I think I'd safely say that was my best goal. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I remember that night. I played left back, I think. Yeah, and
Yes.
Dan Prochescu cut in. I don't know, found myself on the edge of the box, and he's rolled me a nice ball, and yeah, bent in the top corner. He always used to do that in training, so it was no surprise to me. No, I'm joking. Yeah, it was a great finish. But on that night, I think David Lee scored in the same game for Chelsea.
That's right.
And I know Graham Stewart played for Everton that night and scored as well. So we always talk about that night of goal scorers, which was quite nice because we're obviously quite close. So it was good, memorable. Like I say, just another good game at the Bridge. You know, like I say, and it was changing at the time. You know, obviously Matthew Howden's stand was up at the time, and other stuff was getting built. So it was a really good time to kind of to be there, you know.
Did the players sort of feel that something was changing within the club based on, as you said, you just mentioned about the stadium being redeveloped, you then have like the West Stand sort of later on being redeveloped. Did you sort of sense that something big was happening? Although league-wise we were still inconsistent, we weren't sort of challenging for the title, but building blocks were there to the point where Chelsea could potentially be one of the best teams in the league.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, very much so. Obviously, you know, recruitment was changing as well, wasn't it? So we're bringing in international footballers, good international footballers at the time. You know, Mark Hughes, Dan Prochescu, people like that. So it was starting to change. So obviously there was a stream of money that was you know, into the club, which was good. And the stadium was changing, and the player recruitment was changing. And for it to get better, that needed to happen. You know, whether, you know, I stayed or anyone stayed, things progress, and that club needed to progress at the time, and Glenn was moving it forward as best he could. And then when it came out of his hands, the next manager moved it on as well, didn't he? So Yeah, it was a good time, and you sensed it. You did sense it. Things were changing, yeah, for sure, but for the better, Keith.
It was in early February '96 that you joined Sunderland on a permanent transfer after initially joining on loan there. The fee, I believe, was around £300,000. What was the factors behind this move?
Factors. Probably because of the change at Chelsea, really, and you didn't know where I was going to fit in. And I'd been there. I left at 25, 26, I think, 25. So I'd been there, the best part of 10 years, Keith. And you just sometimes, as a player, you make that, it's time to move on a little bit. I just got married, just had our first daughter, and everything was changing. And I just needed a fresh challenge and some new faces. And that was, and I knew it was going to come at the time. I knew I was never going to stay at Chelsea forever. So it was a nice age to leave at 25, 26. So the opportunity to move to Sunderland, I spoke to Peter Reid, obviously went up there on loan to start with to have a look, and they looked at me and I looked at them, and obviously discussed it with my wife. And but speaking to Peter, he was different class. He was a proper football person and a great guy, and someone I still speak to now. And it was a good. It seemed a good move at the time for me, and it was. Sad to leave Chelsea, obviously, and things were changing, but things were changing fast in terms of player recruitment. So you didn't know really where you were going to be in terms of the pecking order. So I just made that decision to go. And again, I had fantastic time at Chelsea. Don't regret leaving at that point. Felt it was right. And like I say, went to Sunderland and had 2 or 3 really good years there with some really good players again. So I was lucky at a massive football club. So I was really fortunate, Keith.
Now, it would be many years later that you would put the Chelsea shirt back on and appear for the Chelsea Old Boys around about the sort of 2010, 2011.
Right.
Alongside the likes of players that you've sort of played with, like Ken Moncal, Dave Besson, and others like Gary Chivers.
Yeah.
How much fun was that to be part of?
Yeah, I mean that's been good. I mean, and hats off to Gary Chivers for that, really, because he got myself involved and Dave involved, Dave Lee involved after we packed up, and there was a route back into kind of reconnecting with ex-players and stuff like that. So I mean, he started that off, which was fantastic, and it blossomed. We don't do it so much now, but it blossomed into something really special because it was great to meet up 2 or 3 times a summer and catch up and play in the game, create a bit of money for charity, but also be in the dressing room and just have the same crack and laugh and same old jokes come out, Keith. But it's just a really good way to reconnect and important as well. And so yeah, they're good games. We don't do them so much now, which is a shame. But mind you, we're all a little bit older, but probably lasts about 15 minutes. But yeah, but that was good. That was good. And like I say, we played probably from that, I think 2010 onwards. We played probably 3 or 4 games every summer, really, for quite a while. But hats off to the club as well, and the owner Abramovich at the time. Obviously, he set up the Past Players Trust, which was very important. We have a box we can go into a couple of times a year at Chelsea, which is fantastic. And we're able to buy tickets, a couple of tickets, at the right time. So, looking after ex-players as a club is really important. And I think Chelsea get it spot on, to be honest. Really good, because I know that they've paid for certain operations to ex-players going back into the 50s and stuff. So it's really important. And like I say, it's part of the history. In whatever way we are part of the history, but it's nice to be, recognised and being able to do those things and go up to the bridge and still watch games, which I really enjoy.
And what's it like being sort of going to Chelsea matches, sort of being part of that particular era? Do you still get recognised quite a bit when you're at the bridge?
Now and again, yeah. When I get the train from Woking, you get a few people going up there, and you kind of get a nod and a wink, and recognise you and say hello and stuff, which is nice, really nice. Obviously, older guys now, so it's a couple of generations on, isn't it? So, but yeah, I love going up there. I'd go up to every game if I could, but obviously work doesn't permit that. But I love going up there, seeing Gary and Dave and John Bumpstead and Colin Pace. They do the hospitality stuff at the club, which is fantastic. And Kerry, of course. So it's great catching up, and ex-players that go into the box and people you haven't seen for, best part of 30 years. So it's good. I enjoy it, and very lucky. We're very lucky that we're able to do it. But I think it's important. And you don't know what road people have been down either. Everyone's travelled a different road since they packed up playing, and whatever they've gone through in their life, and people are struggling. Some people struggle, and we've all struggled in the past and stuff. So it's great to reconnect and chat through those times, and if you can help anyone, that's important as well. So it's good.
Just a couple more questions, Gareth, before we wrap this up, and I want to talk about current events and one little aspect of football that I'm very glad didn't happen in the 80s and 90s, because I think people would have just completely gone off football. I can't see Dennis Wise ever liking this. Was VAR. Now, a lot of people are against it. Some people are sort of thinking that it's the people behind VAR that's the problem, like the officials that you get at Stockley Park. But what's your overall thoughts on VAR? Are you happy for it to stay, or do you think that it needs to be tweaked or just gone?
Well, I mean, unfortunately, I think it's here to stay. I think it could be watered down. I think you're taking a lot of emphasis away from the referee's decisions at that particular time on the pitch. I understand it for offsides. I think if it was just there for offsides, goal line, and penalty decisions, brilliant. But if it's getting involved in other parts of the game, as it does do, it's just slowing the game down. And I don't know whether the supporters, they must respect the supporters when they're having to wait to cheer for a goal.
Yeah.
Like last night, Casemiro scored for Man United, didn't he? And he was clearly offside, but they've celebrated, and then you stop for like 2 or 3 minutes to wait for a decision. Then they've celebrated again. So I think you're losing something. You're definitely losing something with it. So unfortunately, I think it's here to stay. Technology obviously can help, but it can hinder. And I think it's just taking away that personal element. Why is the ref out there? You've got to make these decisions, and sometimes, and the penalty decisions again, I think they can, because he's not going to be able to see everything, is he? The referee on the one referee on the pitch, and I don't know. I don't know what the answer would be to change it. I don't think it will get changed. I think it's probably, I say, it's going to be here, but I think it does take something away, and it waters it down a little bit. And you're turning into every game's like 98 minutes now at least, isn't it? So, but again, I don't think it's affecting the games are good. I think there's some fantastic games out there, but when they get involved too much, everyone's kind of like, oh my God, can you just get on with the game, please? It's one of those, isn't it? So it's frustrating. I find it VAR very frustrating, but I understand why it's there. So, but I really don't know whether it's going to change, but I don't think it will it? What do you think?
I'd like to think it would change in terms of trying to stop the delay in making a decision. If there's could be a time limit in making the decision, and in terms of what's it used for in certain offside decisions, it's very, very questionable. Whether it's a finger offside or a toe, very, very sort of questionable. But I've been saying this to a few people now when I've been going to the games, that it just seems that it's unfortunately part of how they see as football as the entertainment side. It's drama. I don't think fans want that. Fans want the correct decisions, but they want common sense decisions, not to try and create further issues. But we'll see. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah, and I think a big factor of it as well, because the stakes are so high as well, Keith. That's what I find. Obviously, it's in, and they want to get the decisions, and they don't want anyone to be accountable for making the wrong decision, sending the club getting relegated, or not making the Champions League final, or something like that. The stakes are so high that they obviously feel that we need to get this absolutely correct, because the money factor is huge, isn't it?
Money factor, and people's jobs on the line as well.
Yeah, most
Yeah.
definitely, yeah.
But speaking of people's jobs on the line, we'll talk about current Chelsea. Now,
Mm,
obviously you've been to some games as well. There's been a lot of change at Chelsea over the last 12
yeah,
months. This time last year, Roman was still in charge. Thomas
mm,
Tuchel was still manager. We were heading into two cup finals. Now it just complete change. We've had new players come in the January window. Hasn't hit it off yet. Obviously, they're taking its
mm.
time. What's been your thoughts on this current day Chelsea? And do you think that Graham Potter is the right man for the job? And if he is,
Yeah.
can he bring some success to the club?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think Potter, he can do well and has done well in the Premier League. Obviously, it was with Brighton, not with Chelsea. But I think if you can win games in the Premier League, I don't think that's going to make him. These results have made him a bad manager. I think you need a little bit of luck as well. But my biggest concern, and it's a big worry really, is that the new ownership have come in and they bought so many players, Keith. And I just think there's no way Potter's gone, I want no 16 players. Do you know what I mean? No, so those players have been, surely they've been bought over his head. And does he need those players? So are the owners saying to Potter, we're going to buy all your players and you crack on and train them, coach them, and get some results for us? Is that, if that's the remit, and for me, that's a red flag. That's a red flag because they're not football people. And if they're making decisions based on AI and stuff like that, then it is a worry. It is a worry. And obviously they're good, fine young players and stuff, brilliant, but they've not played in the Premier League. Why didn't they go and buy Paulinho from Fulham? The kid's unbelievable, fantastic footballer. It's just stuff like that that worries me. You're flooding the club with all these players, and again, where's the identity? That's the other thing is, are we going to lose our identity from the academy with young homegrown players? If you're a 17-year-old at Chelsea now and you've seen they've just bought 16, whatever it is, players, where am I going to get in their first team? I don't think
Where's
I
the
am.
pathway? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. If you start blocking pathways, you're going to lose all your young players and they're going to struggle in the academy and the results are going to reflect that. And again, you're losing your identity. Mason Mount's been subbed recently. Is he going to get back in the first team? Chelsea needs that. Every club needs their little bit of identity from grassroots and young players coming through. So that's the big worry for me. The big worry. Whether he turns it around or not, I don't think it's so much Potter. I bet his training is brilliant and stuff like that, and he's got players to choose from. It's just as a group getting that chemistry right on the pitch on a Saturday that they can turn it into wins. Obviously, they're a talented group, aren't they? But it's just being able to, get everything on a Saturday afternoon or Sunday, whatever it is, kind of clicking at the right time. And I mean, they started off well against Tottenham, and I'm thinking, you know what? If we score first here, we could have a good day. But as soon as we didn't score, after about 15, 20 minutes, and they started getting back into it, then there was like, oh, which way are we going to go now? And we've never had that in the past. Like when Frank took his team there and they won, we started really sharp, scored goals and bang, bang, bang. And you think we're all on top of them. They were waiting to get beat, but we couldn't put the ball in the net. And then all of a sudden, game changes, they score first. And then it's back onto the Potter story. So I feel for him in that way. But I'm sure he's a good man and he still is a good manager. It's just circumstances that might be out of his control, Keith, possibly. What do you think?
I don't think he's helped himself personally. I think that
Yeah.
questions should be asked about the board, about their decision making a little bit.
Mm.
You do look at certain signings that we've made. The lad from Villa that we spent £20 million on,
Yeah.
he's hardly featured. Why? I get the recruitment process. I get that we've got people behind the recruitment side. The chap from Leipzig, and we've got a couple of others from Brighton. But it just feels like we've stockpiled these players and just given them to Potter and go, right, here you go. And as you say, coach them, mold
Yeah.
them into a team. Well, if you've got players that are not even playing, and certain players that, whether or not people like it or not, perhaps of down tools and certain players not being treated right, and has probably caused a bit of a stir in the dressing room. That hasn't helped the situation at all, and I don't believe Potter can get it right. I think that the job's too big for him, based on so many issues that has happened since Todd and his band of misfits have turned up.
Yeah. No, I see your point of view, mate. Yeah, and it's a tricky one, isn't it? It's a tricky one to put into place, because I don't think, typical Chelsea. It's never happened at another club, really. Something like this. What happened last year with losing Abramovich, and the way it happened, and the reasons for it. It's an unknown to everyone, isn't it? It's an unknown.
Well, it's certainly never dull to support Chelsea. That is for sure. It's not. I don't believe there's been a season where it's ever been quiet and just been
Absolutely
a sail
not.
through. It's not been one of them. But final question, Gareth, and again, thanks very much for coming onto the show. How do you look back on your time at Chelsea?
Oh, with great fondness, Keith. Great fondness. Yeah. I've got lifetime friendships with people that I played football with. Great memories. And wherever you go, you kind of, you're an ex-Chelsea player. You've always got that. So I'm very lucky that way. So yeah, with great fondness, and I just wish the club well, and hopefully they can keep progressing and keep winning trophies, and make sure that the right people are in the right places for that to happen. But like I say, I just hope they keep their identity a little bit, and just keep things moving forward from a kind of an English players and youth players, and keep them coming through the ranks as well, because I think that's very important for a club.
Well, Gareth, it's been great to have you on the show. I appreciate your time, and obviously good luck with your team that you're coaching with at the moment, and hopefully we'll get to see you down at the Bridge quite soon as well, before the end of the season.
Thanks, Keith. Thank you very much for your time. Brilliant. Thank you.